going to take it back to the past to around 1990, 1991 or so. So join me in about 16, 17 years into the past, and let's relive the good old Nintendo classic portable Game Boy.
I guess you could say the Game Boy's life began with the Game & Watch, a series of handheld games created by Gunpei Yokoi. Yokoi thought of the Game & Watch when he saw a businessman on a train playing with an LCD calculator. Each Game & Watch came with a single game and a digital clock on a small LCD screen, thus the name Game & Watch. From 1980 to 1991, Nintendo made a total of 60 different Game & Watch games. These little handhelds became very popular, and suddenly, the handheld video game market became a viable business in the gaming industry. Gunpei Yokoi decided to take the idea of Game & Watch a step further, and in 1989 his team at Nintendo came out with the Game Boy. It combined the portability of the Game & Watch with the graphics and interchangeable cartridges of the NES. Now let's take a closer look.
The original Game Boy features a 2.6-inch black and green, spinach green, reflective screen. Its controls are almost identical to the NES controller, so it was immediately familiar to NES fans. Volume and contrast controls allowed you to adjust for optimal display and sound, while headphones could be plugged into the bottom of the unit. Nintendo knew that multiplayer games would be just as popular on the road as they are at home, so they included a link port and cable.
The system was simple to turn on, you just moved the switch on the top. The back of the system was where you put the cartridges and the 4 AA batteries. On the left side was the contrast slider, which was for the screen, and a power connector. If you had the Game Boy battery pack, you can plug it in and play without the need of batteries, which is sweet. As you can see on the front, the control layout is exactly the same as the NES controller, which was great because you didn't have to get used to a new control layout or anything. So now we come to the biggest gripe of the Nintendo Game Boy, which is the LCD screen. It's pretty small and the color scheme is black and green. A lot of gamers wondered why Nintendo didn't go with a color screen like the Game Gear. For starters, using a color screen would make the system cost more money. Nintendo wanted the Game Boy to be affordable.
And for good reason. It costs more and was a freaking battery vampire. So what if the games looked and played great? If you were spending all your allowance on batteries, you can't buy new games. Wikipedia claims it would last anywhere from 5 to 6 hours, compared to the Game Boy's 10 to 14.
So pretty much that meant you had to either get a car adapter to plug into your car, get an AC adapter to plug into the wall, and have a rechargeable battery. That's the only two alternatives you had to do. That or carry a shitload of AA batteries on you. And nobody is going to want to do that. And pretty much, and since the bulky design and things like that, that turned off a lot of gamers pretty much. Especially when the Game Boy was nice and light and portable and could fit right in your pocket. This, you had to have a fucking suitcase to carry it. Or some kind of purse or a bag or something to carry it. This thing was just too bulky for its own good.
Some of my fondest gaming memories come from playing shrunk-down versions of classics. Everybody knows that it's not the system, but the games that matter, and Nintendo made sure all the favorites would fit in your pocket. They were even fortunate enough to secure Tetris as a packed-in game.
It was like bread and butter. Tetris was a huge success and was the perfect portable game to go with the Game Boy.
Video link and blow your opponent away. Game Boy, only from Nintendo. Now you're playing with power, portable power.
Nintendo shipped over 1 million Game Boys in 1989. By 1991, it seemed like everyone had a Game Boy. Hell, even President Bush had a Game Boy. Despite competing against systems with superior technology, the Game Boy creamed the competition with its simple design, awesome battery life, and great game selection. The Game Boy ended up being the most successful system of all time for Nintendo, selling over 118 million units. It was also inducted into the National Toy Hall of Fame in 2009. The Game Boy lives on today in its evolutions, but I will still never forget that wonderful Christmas day when I got my Game Boy.
The Game Boy was the first gaming system that I bought myself. I saved my pennies from cutting lawns and my meager allowance, and finally the day came. I walked into the Toys R Us store, marched past the bikes and trains, and found the video games. I was ready to buy it when I noticed something. I was tempted by the bright and colorful screen of the Sega Game Gear and the Atari Lynx. I had the Game Gear in my hand and was starting to walk away, but then I stopped. For the price of a Game Gear, I could buy a Game Boy and 2 games. My penny pincher side had saved me, and I went home with one of the most important gaming machines of my life, the Game Boy.